Thank you very much. I gladly speak to the issue. Okay, while I have not prepared any set text. I thought I'd sort of wait what questions come up, and I think the first job I have really is to explain what sort of art guy I am in this consortium of politicians, experts, and government people, and that will also make a little bit more comprehensive what that radicalization network really is. Now, I usually refer to myself as in these contexts, as a practitioner. Now, what kind of practitioner I'm talking about, because we're practitioner in all sorts of fields. I am practitioner in work settings of social work and, in fact, therapeutic work, psychotherapeutic work, that is aimed at diffusing risks of violent extremism, which is usually referred to as de-radicalization, a term that nobody around me really likes very much, but we haven't really come up with much better terms. Sometimes we just refer to that as being practitioners in exit interventions, or largely speaking in prevent interventions. Now, I realize I should probably explain in 5 minutes how that works. Is closer? Yeah. Okay. I wasn't aware of that. You probably expect me to explain in a couple of minutes how de-radicalization works. I will actually speak to that tomorrow in the academy at greater length. I also see a chance to actually give some more general feedback representing 100, 200 practitioners that I've met over the last 3 to 4 years, feedback from practitioners to policy level. Now, if I recall how the Radicalisation Awareness Network was built, it was basically set up by the Commissioner of the Interior at the time, Cecilia Malmström, and it was a very great idea because she basically came, and her team came and said, well, listen, we don't know anything about that, really. We have no idea what to do, point one. Now, that's quite a success for policymakers, because usually their role is to step out and say, we know what to do, and we are very firm about it, and we are qualified, and we will do it. Now, they said the opposite. Well, this is so complex, we just don't know what to do. Yes, we've realized we need prevention. It just is not a solution to, lock up a couple of people and not do anything with it, and not do anything in the pre-criminal space to prevent risks. But we just don't know how. Second is you practitioners who work in the field in different member states, who work in prison, in community settings, in youth and child welfare, family welfare. You know most about it. You are the practitioners in that field. Now let's get you guys together, exchange, get to know each other, and then try what proved to be the more difficult of the two tasks, feed up that knowledge to policy level. Because once we practitioners met, it was actually quite easy. We fairly quickly agreed on the base principles of how you do that kind of work, which I will explain in a minute. But it still is not very difficult to communicate that to policy level. So I'm in the mission of sort of giving general practitioner feedback. Let me start with one. And I'm very glad with the speakers here, because Ukraine was referred to. The fact that that so-called jihadist radicalization is not the only problem that was said here. If you were to do a second conference on internal security, I would not call it the way that it is called. I would not call it Islamic State and counter-radicalization. I would rather call it violent extremism, broadly speaking, and whatever we can do with it and against it. Because then you open up a much broader sense for your target group, which is basically pretty uniform. It is basically young, very angry, very unstable, disgruntled, disenfranchised people who are understandably angry and might be up for causing some problem. And they might also be neo-Nazi right-wing extremists. This is the second, and actually in terms of threat, the highest threat in Europe and in North America as well. And they might go to Ukraine and train. In fact, they do. They do by the hundreds. They're there. And once it comes to the objective to actually dealing with them on the ground, not only the returnees are a much exaggerated fantasy of us. They're not half as risky as we, but they are, but the risks actually come from homegrown fields much more than our discourse suggests. So that would be one little piece of practitioner feedback, broaden your topic, and then also focus it more on the question of what can we actually do? Now, are we supposed to resolve the Syrian crisis here in this room? I bet not. Is it going to be very reasonable to think what Putin is going to do next and how we can actually influence him? Well, we have better things to do, I think. The RAN network is really about what can we reasonably do once we have set up our work. It was quite interesting because the definition of the RAN was not quite correct here on the slide, but that's fine. We are used to be misunderstood. The RAN is not really about understanding better what radicalization is. In terms of that research, we have more than enough. Research on the problem is plenty. We need research on the solutions. So it's more the research on what can we possibly do? And that would be my second feedback on what sort of research we should actually do and sort of research we should fund. There is tons of research on the problem. Let's engage in research on the solutions, which is not the same thing. Now, maybe before we lose sight of that, and I promise that at least for 2 or 3 minutes I get to the principles of de-radicalization work. There's one other fallacy, one other mistake that's generally made. Yes, the internet is a part of the problem. It's a factor of radicalization. In fact, already as a factor of radicalization, I think it is overrated. It is exaggerated. And everything today has to do with the internet and with social media. And of course, you have to watch what's going on there. But one thing is certainly not true. The internet, and that might depress us for a second, but the internet cannot, for intrinsic reasons, cannot be much help for the solution. And that, I am fully aware, is my and our practitioners' conclusion. It's not yet in the discourse. Whenever politicians, policymakers, and experts get together, the first thing they say is, well, there is all that tons of stuff on the internet. We need to level against it, and we produce counter messages and counter narratives and you name it. There's nothing wrong with having a couple of informative networks and platforms where you can orient yourself, and maybe also 2 or 3 or 5 educational videos. But please think about the target group we are talking about. Young people, slightly paranoid, very distrustful, only listen to their own guys anyhow. You cannot de-radicalize online, period. You cannot even do targeted prevent work, period. So stop the talk about counter-narratives. Invest in human resources. Invest in people who can actually work as mentors, who have the skills and the talents and the motivation to do de-radicalization work. It's not for everyone, I acknowledge that. Me and my colleagues are doing that for various different biographical, personal reasons and have a skill in that. But do invest in human resource and not so much in technology solutions. That was about the third sort of out of the program feedback from practitioner sides I wanted to give. Having another 2 or 3 minutes, I mean, the basic principles, and just imagine me working with face-to-face directly with 5, 6, 7 young persons in prison mostly, but also in community, and I have a co-facilitator with myself. So practitioner in the sense that we get together with these young people and try to do something with them. And to make it very short, this work that's usually referred to as DRAD, or disengagement or exit work, is best understood if you're aware that it's quite similar to psychotherapy. You might think, well, I'm not a clinician, I'm not a psychologist. In fact, I don't trust psychologists. Anyhow, how could we? No, but the process, it is something very sensitive, very personal. And if you and I realize we need to change our personality, what do? We either get in-depth coaching or we do psychotherapy. And there's an understanding that this we do with a direct person on a basis of trust in a confidential area. And we will certainly not do this by watching videos on the internet of any sorts. So it is a very sensitive process that takes 2 years, costs a little bit of money, but actually saves us an awful lot of expenses, on taking care of victims and damage and all other sorts of things. But please picture it as a midterm, long-term process that has almost the characteristic of a psychotherapy, which means that you first have to take care that you create an atmosphere of trust between you and your clients, and also among the clients if you work in groups. I tend to work with groups and think that's actually more productive. Now, this will be not that easy because we are dealing with young people who tend to be very distrustful. So make sure that you don't start your work if you don't have a level of trust. In order to get that, make sure as a government that your practitioners of DRAD work are independent. So they are not the prison psychologists. They are not, the police investigator. They are not the school psychologists. They need to be independent and need to be able to say to their clients, well, listen, you can trust me. That's confidential. I'm not going to write a report on you personally. I don't feed back anything. This is confidential. So this is the ground settings. Now, once you go in there, what successful colleagues do is the process. They proceed in an open process manner. Now, what is that? It basically means open process, that you don't have a schedule, you don't have a lesson plan, you don't even have an assortment of topics. Now, most of those that will come to you, to government, and say, well, I want to do prevent work, I want to do de-radicalization, will probably present a lesson plan. So be wary of these things. It needs to be open process. No schedule, no lesson plan. Just sort of a circle of people, and the issues that come up, I guarantee you, are exactly the issues. They go into family issues. They go into the social atmosphere issues. They go into the experience of being a perpetrator, also of being victimized. All these issues are there. They will come naturally and with young people very quick and very energetic. And that's the kind of stuff you work with for an extended period of time. Now, that'd be much more to say, and I will elaborate on all the 3 issues, actually, the ground principles of that kind of work. By implication, also the practitioners you need, also the réseau of the family issues that you need to be able to take care of. Plus, of course, I'm a practitioner, but you need a national action plan for that, because doing DRAD is only one element, and you need all sorts of other elements in place in order for us to be able to really do good work. I'm much tempted also to speak a couple of sentences on law enforcement and juridic issues. Don't have time for that. Let me just say that much. We've had the experience very often as practitioners that law enforcement and laws actually mess up our work on the ground. They can cause, security policies can cause lots of trouble. I think especially the UK has made many experiences. And so let me just give you one example. which is highly relevant right now for Europe, especially for Denmark, Aarhus, and for Finland. Most countries actually do pull passports and prevent and actually criminalize travel. Now, let's not forget, traveling is a human right. So you better not easily criminalize that. Most of, or a significant number of people that went to Syria had actually very humanistic social motivations. But secondly, on the practical level, if you criminalize travel, you have all sorts of negative side effects. First, the young people will not come back that easily after having realized that they made a mistake, because they know they are awaiting trial. Secondly, before people go, family and friends are not going to be very ready to report their loved ones to authorities, because they're basically giving them to law enforcement. Report them once they get worried that the person is evidently acting oddly and might actually be about to leave the country. But we need parents and we need communities to be ready to cooperate with authorities. Now, the Aarhus model has been extremely successful. We're working closely with them. Do invite them. Well, everybody invites them anyhow, they don't have time. But they've been able to reduce the number of Syrian travelers, I call them like that, Syrian travelers, from 30 in the year 2013 to just 1 in 2014. They have not criminalized travel at the time. You could at any time, if you're of age, go to Syria. So evidently they must have done a couple of other things, and they did them very well. So that is not my main expertise, but very passionately felt practitioners' views on that. And my concern, and I think the concern in Aarhus, and I can be public about that, I guess it's pretty much on the open, they are afraid that incoming center-right-wing government just decides to criminalize travel and pull passports, because they know if that happens, security will go down. Very many very angry young men will be sitting in Aarhus, and who knows what they do. I think it's about time to close here, just with respect to giving you an opportunity to maybe ask some questions or have food or whatever. Thank you very much.